At a corner cafe on Church Street in Burlington, Vermont, Catherine Whitmore set her leather clutch on the counter. Her phone was at her ear, Vincent Mallory's voice. A board emergency? She took her coffee and walked out. 3 tables away. Daniel Reeve, 41, flannel sleeves rolled, knuckles scarred from a generator he'd fixed that morning, watched the clutch sit there. He picked it up $40,000 in cash ID, a folded slip he didn't unfold. He caught her at the curb, held it out, walked away before she could ask his name. She stood there frozen, watching him go. By 11 that morning, Catherine was back at the Whitmore Foundation Tower on Main Street. She set the clutch on her desk and opened it again. 40,000? She counted twice. Not a bill missing. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Mallory. She did not return any of them. The cash had been withdrawn that morning under a vendor cash payment requisition. Her CFO had pushed through at the last minute. Urgent? He had called it off cycle. She had not questioned it then. She tried to remember the man's face. Blue flannel, steady eyes. The way he had turned away from her on the sidewalk as if he did not need her to say thank you. That was all she had. Catherine sat on the board of the Burlington Business Improvement District. The district's security feeds covered every block of Church Street. She pulled the 942 footage in her office alone, door locked. There he was at a corner table, drinking black coffee. He stood when she walked out. He took the clutch. He followed her to the door. Then he came back, sat down, finished his coffee, carried the empty cup to the bus tray. That last detail held her. He had returned the 40,000 and then walked back to finish his coffee like nothing had happened. She asked Eleanor Pace to run the plate on the dust gray Ford pickup that pulled away from the curb 3 minutes later. Eleanor was the senior accountant, had been with the family for 22 years. She paused for half a second before passing back the address. Catherine noted the pause but did not press. The house sat at the south edge of Burlington where the streets thinned into chain-link fences and birch trees. Catherine parked across the road. The man was not in his own yard. He was kneeling by the neighbor's fence, replacing a rotted post, pounding gravel into the hole with a length of 2x4. A small girl sat on the porch of the house she had come to find. 9, maybe 10. Brown hair held back with a plastic clip. A hardcover book open across her knees, a worn, stuffed rabbit beside her hip. He looked up, recognized her, his face closed. Catherine got out, crossed the road slowly. She had a plain white envelope in her hand. She had not labeled it. She held it out at the edge of the property line. For returning the wallet, she said $500. It isn't reward, it's just thank you. He stopped pounding the gravel, set the 2x4 down against the post, stood, wiped his hands on his jeans. It isn't that I don't need it, he said. His voice was lower than she had remembered. I just don't want it like this. He turned back to the post. The girl on the porch closed her book over one finger. Dad, she called. Who's the lady? He did not look up. Someone passing through. Catherine stood there with the envelope still in her hand. She put it back in her coat, walked to her car, sat behind the wheel for a long moment before turning the key. A man who fixed his neighbor's fence for free. A man who would not take $500 for returning $40,000. There was a math to that, and she could not solve it yet. Catherine could not let it go. The next evening, after a board call she barely remembered attending, she drove the South End streets again slowly. Not looking for anything she could name, she found the Ford parked outside the Burlington Community Free Clinic on Pine Street, a flat-roofed building donated decades ago by a doctor whose name was still on the door. She parked 2 blocks away, walked back through the cold. The sidewalk was wet from a brief snow that had not lasted. The clinic had a side window onto an exam room. The blinds were drawn 3/4 down. Through the bottom 4 inches of glass, she could see a fluorescent panel, the edge of an exam table, and the lower halves of 2 men. One wore green scrubs. The other wore flannel. A teenager lay on the table. Catherine could not see his face, only the boy's chest rising shallow. The hem of his shirt was dark with blood. A stab wound below the ribs. Daniel Reeve was suturing it. His gloved hands moved in a way she could not look away from. The needle went in and came out at the same depth each pass. The spicing identical, the thread drawn through with a small tug and no wasted motion. The clinic's doctor stood beside him with his arms folded. He was watching. He was not assisting. He was studying. Catherine turned away before either man could glance up. She drove home and sat at her kitchen island with her laptop. She did not take off her coat. She typed Daniel Reeve, Vermont. Nothing came back that fit. A retired insurance broker in Rutland. A high school cross-country coach in Bennington. No handyman in Burlington. She typed Daniel Reeve, MD. The 4th result was an archive press page from Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. The photograph at the top showed a man in dress blues. Younger jaw, a little leaner, but the same eyes. The caption read, Lieutenant Commander Daniel Reeve, Navy Medical Corps, receives the Distinguished Service Medal for Combat Surgical Service. The date was 2015. Catherine sat with one hand on the trackpad and one hand at her mouth. She did not move for a long time. The man who had returned her $40,000 was not just an honest stranger. He had been somebody once, and then he had decided to be no one. She closed the laptop, did not search further. Some doors were not hers to open uninvited. The next morning was the monthly foundation board meeting. Catherine sat at the head of the long walnut table with the lake glittering through the glass behind her. Vincent Mallory occupied the seat to her right, as he had for 9 years. He moved through the agenda with the smooth tempo of a man who had done this since before she had graduated college. On item 7, he tabled a $2.3 million disbursement to Cascade Mountain Infrastructure Consulting. Eleanor's pen hovered over the approval sheet. Then her hand began to shake. She signed anyway. Catherine watched Eleanor's hand. Then she watched Mallory. "I'd like to see the full contract before disbursement," she said. The room went still in the way. "Only rooms with old money in them can." Mallory smiled. His mouth moved. His eyes did not. "Of course, Catherine," he said. "Anything for you?" He moved to item 8. Catherine did not look down at her notes for the rest of the meeting. Catherine went back to the South End house 3 days later in the slow blue light before sunset. She left her business jacket in the car. She wore a plain wool sweater. She did not bring an envelope. Daniel was on the porch this time, sanding the rough edge of a step. Nora's bike lay on its side in the grass. The chain was off. The front tire was flat. He looked up, did not stand. "Mr. Reeve," she said, "I'd like to ask you something professional, not a reward." He set the sandpaper aside. She told him about the Foundation's Rural Health Initiative, mobile primary care for the Northeast Kingdom. They were short a consultant who understood field medicine, hard travel, low resources, someone who had worked in real conditions. "Not from a hospital tower," she finished. He did not speak for a long moment. "I don't practice anymore." "I know," Catherine said, then quieter. "I saw you at the clinic." He went still in a different way than before. "Not closed, held." "Personal reasons?" he said. She nodded, did not press. Nora came down the porch steps with her school backpack still on. She saw Catherine and stopped. Catherine said, "Hi." The girl considered her. "My tire's flat?" "I can see that." Daniel went over and knelt by the bike. He pulled the tire off the rim with 2 thumbs, found the puncture in 3 seconds, patched it from a kit in the kitchen drawer his daughter ran to get. The movements were the same as the suture work. Economy, no wasted thought. Nora watched Catherine watch her father. "Dad," the girl said, "can she stay for dinner?" Daniel did not answer immediately. He smoothed the patch with his thumb, pumped the tire, tested the pressure with his palm. Then he nodded once. The kitchen smelled like garlic and butter. The light was the warm amber of a fixture that had not been updated since the 80s. Spaghetti, a plain green salad, a jug of water on the table. Nora talked. Catherine listened. "My mom used to draw maps," Nora said, twirling pasta. "Not real maps, made-up ones. Like a country called Borrowwood, with 3 rivers and a city where everyone lived in towers made of books." "That sounds wonderful," Catherine said. She knew the names of all the winter stars, like all of them. She used to tell me about Orion and his belt and what people in Egypt called it. Daniel set his fork down quietly. He picked it up again. His knuckles were white around the handle. The wedding ring was still on his left hand. Catherine saw it without meaning to. "What happened to her?" Catherine asked, gentle. "She got sick," Nora said. 2 years ago, almost 3. She said it the way children do when they have lived inside a fact long enough to carry it. Daniel's eyes stayed on his plate. After dinner, Nora hugged Catherine at the door without asking permission. The hug was quick and complete. Then she was gone up the stairs to brush her teeth. Daniel walked Catherine to her car. "Thank you," she said. He looked at the dark yard, then at her. "She doesn't usually do that." "I know." He held the door open for her, closed it. She did not start the engine right away. She sat with her hands on the wheel and looked at the warm square of the kitchen window until the light went out. Catherine spent the next 2 banking days inside the Foundation's accounts. She asked Eleanor for 18 months of Cascade Mountain Consulting invoices. Eleanor said she would have them by Thursday. Thursday came. Eleanor said she would have them by Friday. Friday came. Catherine walked into Eleanor's office and shut the door. "Eleanor." The older woman set her glasses down. She did not look up. "Catherine," she said, "please don't dig there." That was all. She turned back to her screen. Her hands stayed flat on the desk so that they would not tremble. Catherine watched her for a moment, did not push, closed the door behind her. She drove south after work. The road to the South End was familiar now. Daniel was on the porch with a mug. Nora's lamp was already off upstairs. The porch light was a dull yellow that did not reach the yard. Catherine sat in the chair across from him without being invited. She set the question between them as if it were a small physical object. If a foundation withdraws $40,000 in cash on a Monday morning for an emergency vendor payment, she said, "What would you think?" Daniel did not answer for a long time. A truck rolled past on the next street. A neighbor's dog barked twice and stopped. Cash payments of that size from a nonprofit. He said, "Finally come down to 3 things. Bribery, witness money, or laundering," he said. The words, the way a doctor reads a chart, flat, unornamented. "Look at who signed the requisition." He added, "That's where it starts." She studied his profile. The porch light caught the line of his jaw. "How do you know that exactly?" He did not look at her. "I knew a man once who learned the hard way." He did not say more. She did not ask more. They sat in the silence for what felt like a long time, but was probably 4 minutes. When she stood to leave, he stood too. He did not walk her to the car. He just stood at the top of the steps with his hands in his pockets and watched her go. She drove straight to the foundation tower, used her key card at the side entrance. The lobby was dark except for the night security desk. The guard nodded without speaking. He had known her since she was 16. In her office, she pulled the requisition slip from the filing system. $40,000 off cycle. Vendor name redacted in the line marked beneficiary. Signature block in the bottom right, Vincent K. Mallory. She sat in her chair with the screen lighting her face and did not move for a while. Outside the lake was a black plate. A barge crawled across it somewhere far north. She picked up her phone for most of her adult life when something cracked open under her. She had called the family attorney. Tonight, she scrolled past his name. She scrolled past Elena. She scrolled past her mother. She tapped a number she had saved without a last name. It rang twice. He picked up. "Daniel," she said, "I need you to tell me what to do next." There was a pause on the line. Not hesitation, calculation. "Don't put anything in writing," he said. "Don't tell Eleanor and don't sleep at your own place tonight." She closed her eyes. All right. Catherine met Mallory in his office at 9 the next morning. The room had been her grandfather's once. The carpet was older than she was. She sat opposite him in the chair he had been pushing her toward for 2 days. He poured her coffee without asking if she wanted any. "Catherine," he said, leaning back, "I've been worried about you." She held the cup but did not drink. "You've been under a great deal of strain." He went on. "Your father carried more than he ever showed. I watched him do it. I watched it kill him. I don't want to watch it happen to you." "Vincent, take a few weeks," he said. "Bermuda, Aspen, get away from the spreadsheets. Let me handle the routine items. We can revisit the larger questions when you're rested." His voice was warm. His face was warm. His eyes did not move from hers. She set the cup down without drinking. "I'll think about it," she said. She walked out and did not stop until she was in the elevator alone. That afternoon, Daniel was at the Burlington City Hall Annex replacing the brushes on a backup generator on the second floor. Routine job. He had the panel open and the smell of ozone in his nose. The window above him was cracked open to vent the room. Through the open window, he heard a man's voice in the office next door. Calm, lazy, familiar from no source he could name. "Welcome." The voice was saying, "Vincent here. Listen, Catherine's been showing some signs. Paranoia, insisting on documents. She has no business chasing. I'd like a wellness check on the table. If it comes to that, she has access to assets that, if mishandled, would be, let's say, concerning." Daniel's screwdriver stopped against the brass plate. He stood very still. He did not look up at the open window. He counted to 5 in his head, the way he had once counted to 5 before answering a question at a debriefing. The voice on the phone said, "Yes, Catherine Whitmore. Your old friend Daniel turned the last screw on the panel a quarter turn." "Slow, then another?" He put his tools back into the canvas bag one at a time. He carried the bag down the back stairs. He did not call her from the parking lot. He drove home. "Nora had a bad night?" She came into the kitchen at 10 o'clock in her socks and her green pajamas, holding Mr. Biscuit by one ear. "I had a dream that the door was open and you weren't there." He picked her up. She was almost too big to pick up now. He carried her back upstairs and sat on the edge of her bed. "Dad?" she said into his shoulder. "Are you sad sometimes?" "Yes, like all the time, sometimes more than others." She was quiet for a long moment. "Is Catherine coming back for dinner?" He did not answer. When her breathing had evened out, he went downstairs. He stood at the kitchen counter for a full minute. Then he picked up the phone and called. She answered on the second ring. "You're being watched," he said. "How do you know?" He looked at the dark window above the sink. "Because I used to be the kind of person they send to watch other people." Eleanor asked to meet her at a coffee shop in Wookie. On the far side of the bridge, where no one from the foundation ever ordered lunch, a place with green vinyl booths and a counter that had been there since the 70s, Catherine arrived first. Eleanor came in with her coat still buttoned. She did not take it off. She slid a small brass key across the table, the kind that opens a safe deposit box. "I have to say this all at once," Eleanor said. "Don't ask questions until I finish." Catherine put her hand over the key. "Vincent has been routing money through Cascade Mountain Consulting for almost 3 years. Eleanor said it isn't an infrastructure firm. It's a pass-through. The end recipients are witnesses in his nephew's federal embezzlement trial. He's been paying them to disappear. He's been using us to do it." Catherine did not move. "My son was the one who first noticed it." Eleanor went on. "Marcus, he was an analyst here. He brought it to me in 2023. I told him to bring it to the Bureau." Her voice cracked once. She continued. 6 weeks later, he was on his bike on Riverside Avenue and a brown SUV ran him into a guardrail and kept going. He survived. Both legs, a spleen. They could not prove intent. Eleanor, he's in protective custody now. Has been for 14 months. The Bureau placed him after the second incident. Her eyes were wet but level. "I have copies of everything. Wire transfers, off-book ledgers, an audio file. They are in a safe deposit box at the Montpelier Savings on State Street. She nodded at the key. That's the box. But I cannot walk into that bank. If Vincent's people see me there, my son is dead, Catherine. He's all I have. Catherine wrapped her fingers around the key. The metal was warm from Eleanor's hand. You need someone outside the circle, Eleanor said. Someone whose name doesn't appear in any of our records. No vendor list, no board minute, no internal email. Catherine knew she drove south that evening. Daniel was on the porch when she pulled up. He had been waiting. She had not told him she was coming. She came up the steps and set the key on the small table between the chairs.